Today on the bench I have my Azden PCS-5000 2-meter transceiver. Now I made a video about this thing a couple of years ago where I replaced the memory battery. When I replaced the memory battery in this the first time, I just kind of used some stuff I had laying around, which was an old CR2032 battery. And I'm not sure what condition the battery was in the first place. It may have been a little bit on the old side. And you can see here the other thing that I did was I reused the tabs from the original battery that was in this radio and resoldered them to this battery. Now in order to get them to solder to this battery, I had to kind of use a lot of heat in order to get the solder to wet to the surface of the battery. So in combination of this battery probably being somewhat on the old side and the extra heat that I had to apply to it to get the solder tabs to solder onto the battery, I probably was looking at a shortened life. So what's happened is this battery has failed after, I don't know if it's been 2 or 3 years or somewhere in there, even though these things are supposed to last a lot longer than that. So this time I'm going to replace the battery with this smaller battery that you can see here. Now again, this isn't the right battery for this radio, and this should be a decent battery in terms of age and quality. It should be reasonable. So looking at the circuit board here, you should be able to see there's a silkscreen outline that shows where the original battery would have went. That would have been the original footprint for it. In order to mount the smaller battery in place, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of the attached solder tabs and bend it over. I'm going to use the negative tab in this case, and I'm going to put the insulator pad back on like that, and then I'm going to drop the battery in and solder the negative terminal to the original hole where the original terminal would have went. So then the battery will sit in like that. And then I should be able to just put a short jumper wire between the positive terminal and the other hole in the circuit board. That should allow me to mount the smaller battery in place. Now I just want to make sure that I mention that this battery is in fact a 3-volt battery, just like the one that came out of it. So the voltage is the same, it's just the size that's different. I've got a pair of hemostats temporarily holding the battery in place so that I can solder it, and I flipped the board over. I ended up removing this board from the radio to make it a little bit easier to work with. There was just one wire holding it on, so I just unsoldered that. As you can see here, I've cut a small piece of wire and bent it so that it'll go through the circuit board, but then also solder to the tab on the battery. So what I think I'll do first is solder the reverse side of the circuit board, solder the wire in there so it stays in place, and then I'll tack it to the battery and clean things up. On the battery side, I'm going to add a little bit of flux just to try and help this solder a little bit better. Actually, I put a little too much on there, I think. So the battery is now soldered on, so all I really need to do now is just clip these leads off and clean off all the excess flux. I've got the board ready to go back in the radio. The battery's all soldered in and everything's cleaned up, and I've got that one red wire soldered back on this side of the board, so now I'm ready for reassembly of the radio. I'm not going to document all that in this video since I've done that in my previous video, which I will link to below in the comments. So if you want to watch the other video, just click on that link. One last thing before I assemble this, I've added a layer of Kapton tape over the top of this battery just to make sure that it doesn't short to anything in the case. Now I don't think that would happen. There should be plenty of air gap around this thing. I've got the radio all assembled and back together and powered up. And you also might notice that there is a frequency entered here into memory channel 0. And if I push memory channel 1, there's also a frequency programmed in there as well. So if I turn the radio off and then turn the power supply off, which is back here out of the camera shot right now, and wait a few minutes, here I'll turn the radio on just to show that there's no power to it. And now if I flip the power supply back on and turn the radio on, you'll notice that the memory channels stayed intact. Now this radio always defaults to memory channel 0 when you turn it off, so that's normal, but if I go to memory channel 1, the information is still stored there. So I think this is working for now. Hopefully this battery will last a little bit longer than the last one that I put in here. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you'd like to leave a comment or subscribe, feel free to do that as well. Thanks for watching.